Good afternoon, and welcome back to our episode where we have a very special Gothic guest, and it is Dr. Jeff Thompson. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much, Carmen and Jeanie. It's nice to talk with you again.
Yes, yes, we love having you on because you are so knowledgeable about so many things in the horror world, Gothic world.
Especially
Thank-
at this time when we are celebrating a special Gothic milestone
hmm
with the 60th. Oh, they get that 60th. Wow.
Yes.
60th anniversary of Dark Shadows,
Yes.
which is why Dr. Jeff is with us because he is a Dan Curtis. What shall we call it? Not obsessive, but
Expert.
yeah, you're a Dan Curtis expert and a fan. So
Yes.
that's what I
Mhm.
was trying to get to. Yes.
Yes,
So you've written the
absolutely.
books, and so you've got the Dark Shadow in, which is why we said, hey, we got to get Dr. Jeff for the 60th so he can give us some more Dark Shadow. So there
Yes.
we go.
And
Okay.
Dr. Jeff, tell a little bit about yourself because like it's been a while since you've been on in this realm of our episodes and to remind our viewers and listeners who you are.
I am Dr. Jeff Thompson. I teach English part-time now at Tennessee State University and Nashville State Community College. I taught English at TSU for 35 years and then retired a little bit early, but then in more recent years, I've gone back to TSU and Nashville State. Um, as you have mentioned, I have written books about producer-director Dan Curtis, who created Dark Shadows, directed Burnt Offerings, produced The Night Stalker, and just at last month, at the end of May, I was inducted into the Rondo Awards Monster Kid Hall of Fame.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. The Rondo Awards are given out every year for the best in classic horror, sci-fi, fantasy books, movies, TV shows, podcasts, artwork, magazines, DVDs, Blu-rays, everything.
hmm
And so I was inducted into the Monster Kid Hall of Fame because I am a monster kid. I grew up reading books and comic books, building monster models, watching Batman and Dark Shadows, and
hmm
then later writing for fanzines, magazines,
hmm
books, multi-author books, as well as my own books. So I've sort of turned my lifelong interest in monsters, horror, science fiction, sci-fi, fantasy into my life's work of teaching, where I always include a lot of popular culture,
hmm
and writing. My three books, as well as articles for websites and multi-author books, magazines, and such. There's a long interview with me in Wonder Magazine number 18, and it
Okay.
was nominated for a Rondo Award.
Oh,
And then
very
in the
cool.
brand new Wonder 19, there is an interview with me about the Norliss tapes, one of Dan Curtis's cult favorite TV movies.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah,
again,
we'll check those
welcome.
out.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, this is the 60th anniversary of Dark Shadows. 1966 was some year, wasn't it? Because in that year we saw the premieres of such TV shows as Batman, Dark Shadows,
Yes.
Star Trek,
hmm
The Green Hornet, The Time Tunnel, Mission Impossible, That Girl, The Monkees.
hmm
So 66 was a great year for television as well as film, books,
hmm
music, everything. Um,
hmm
Dark Shadows began on ABC on Monday, June 27th,
Okay.
1966. The first episode was videotaped at the TV studio 2 weeks earlier than that on Monday, June 13th, 1966. So the whole month of June is sort of especially the last half of June, is a very celebratory time for all of us Dark Shadows fans. And as we are talking today, we're just few days away from June 27th, uh,
Yes.
the actual 60th anniversary.
Oh,
So later this summer, there's going to be a 60th anniversary Dark Shadows convention, the Dark Shadows Festival, which has been going on since 1983.
Okay.
But this year is extra special because we're celebrating the 60th anniversary with about 15 stars from the original
Wow.
1966 to 71 TV show and the 1991 nighttime weekly version of Dark Shadows, and even a 2004 unsold pilot made for the WB, now the CW, that never aired, but Dan Curtis and a few others from the original series were at the helm of that unsold pilot, and it pops up online every once in a while.
Okay.
Um, in addition to the Dark Shadows Festival in Los Angeles, July 31st, August 1st, and 2nd, the next weekend, August 7th, 8th, and 9th, there is going to be a Dark Shadows celebration at Monsterama, a convention in Atlanta, monsteramacon.com. And several of the Dark Shadow stars will be there too. Catherine Lee Scott, James Storm,
Mhm.
horror host Penny Dreadful, who does the podcast Terror at Collinwood, the definitive Dark Shadows podcast. It's fascinating, and then I'm going to be there too. I'm going to be one of the guests at Monsterama and talk about Dark Shadows, the TV show, and the Dark Shadows comic books from Gold Key and other publishers.
Mhm.
And on Friday night of the con, uh, they're going to exhibit the 16 millimeter actual reels of film of Dan Curtis's personal copy of the 1972 TV movie The Night Stalker, the
Wow.
90-minute movie that started Carl Kolchak in movies
Mhm.
and TV episodes, and
Okay.
complete with commercials from the ABC Movie of the Week. And so
Oh, cool.
I'm going to introduce that. Oh, yes. I loved the ABC Movie of the Week that ran from 1969 to 1975 because almost every week was some sort of mystery, suspense, supernatural, occult type movie.
Mhm.
And Dan Curtis himself did several ABC Movies of the Week: Trilogy of Terror, The Night Stalker, The Night Strangler, Scream of the Wolf, The Great Ice Ripoff, not a horror movie, but a heist movie, a
Okay.
crime movie. And then Curtis produced and or directed 7 installments of ABC's late night Wide World Mystery. It was on after the 10 o'clock news or 11 o'clock Eastern time, uh,
Mhm.
competing against Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show and other talk shows.
Mhm.
ABC put scripted dramas on instead,
Okay.
and Wide World Mystery obviously was always something about murder, crime, or the supernatural, ghosts,
Mhm.
things like that. So Curtis was heavily involved in both the primetime movies of the week and the late night fare for ABC in the 1970s.
Okay. Oh, very cool. Well, with Dark Shadows, what is your favorite timeline, would you say?
Oh, Dark Shadows was unusual in that there were many different timelines.
Mhm.
As the world turns, the edge of night, days of our lives, young and restless, exist in the present time, essentially, except for a
Mhm.
few special flashback episodes or dreams or time
Mhm.
trips. One Life to Live did it 2 times. But Dark Shadows was the first and the foremost in terms of switching from the present time to the past, even once to the future, the then future year of 1995, and
Mhm.
even into alternate realities called parallel time.
Mhm.
Um, the show began in the present time, 1966 and 1967, and with the emergence of the vampire character Barnabas Collins as the big draw of the show and what
Mhm.
saved it from cancellation, Curtis and the writers decided, well, let's go back in time and show how Barnabas became a vampire. He was
Mhm.
human, but then he became a vampire, so how did that happen? So that is one of the greatest storylines, one of the greatest stories ever told on television. Very,
Mhm.
very well written, very Shakespearean, very emotional and tragic. Um, and then after that interlude, the show came back to the present time, 1968. And then later, for most of our year of 1969, the show existed in the year 1897. And that was when Dark Shadows was at its peak rating wise. 20 million
Okay.
viewers were watching every afternoon. And that's
Wow.
phenomenal. Now in today's television market, 11 million or 9 million would be a hit show. But Dark
Mhm.
Shadows commanded 20 million viewers in 1969. And even when it was canceled in 71, it had dropped to 12 million, which was still
Huge.
impressive today. But after 1897, there was another interlude in the present time, and then a switch into what was known as 1970 parallel time.
Hmm.
Uh, there was a room in the Collinwood mansion that acted as a gateway or a portal into a parallel alternate reality in which the characters on the show, played by the same actors,
Hmm.
had different relationships because the characters had made different choices, as
Hmm.
the explanation goes. So some were successful, some were rich, some were not. Some had died, some were still alive, some were murderers, different from the characters from the present time storyline.
Hmm.
Um, and then, as I say, after 1970 parallel time, the show switched to the future year of 1995 for 2 weeks, 10 episodes in late July of 1970, which were 10 of the most memorable and remarkable episodes of the series because um, two characters, Barnabas Collins and Dr. Julia Hoffman, were propelled out of parallel time back into our time, but into the future 25 years,
Hmm.
1995, when they found the Collinwood Mansion in ruins. And they had to unravel the mystery of what has happened. Why is the house dilapidated and falling down? Where are the family members? Are they dead? Are they alive? And seeing Collinwood in ruins like that made a huge impact on me and began my lifelong fascination with ruins. I love
Okay.
to see, abandoned, ruined buildings, theaters, and
Hmm.
malls, old houses, everything. Now, because I saw Collinwood in ruins in 1970, and I saw Beneath the Planet of the Apes, so both of them sealed my fascination with ruins.
Oh, that's
And
neat.
then after that, the show went back to the present time, 1970, for 2 months before going to the year 1840
Hmm.
for the near the conclusion of the show, and then the final 3 months took place back in parallel time again, only in the past 1841 parallel time,
Okay.
showing what was happening in that parallel world, parallel to what we had just seen in 1840. So I love all of the storylines for various reasons,
Hmm.
uh, but 1795 would be my favorite, aside from the present day, because I consider that like the norm, the default. Those
Hmm.
are our real characters, and we're just looking into the past to see others. But
Right.
1795 is just extremely well written, well crafted, beautifully acted. As I say, quite tragic, shocking for uh, daytime television, which had never, had vampirism or a costume drama in which the cast, goes back in time and wears period clothes for months on end. Um, and I like the next storyline, which took up most of the year 1968, the creation of a Frankenstein-like creature and
Hmm.
then his mate, and a dream curse that went through the different characters, and they had weird dreams. Um, and then I like 1970 parallel time very much because that too was quite unusual and creative. We saw characters whose names and faces we knew, and yet they were completely different people.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like I say, I was just knocked out by the 10 1995 episodes. And then I enjoyed the 1840 episodes and the strange 1841 parallel time coda, which took the show completely out of our universe and showed us a different world that had no connection to ours, because in all of the other time periods, and this was wise, the writers had one of our people from our present time go back into that world and interact with the characters. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Victoria Winters went to 1795, and Barnabas and Julia went to 1897 and
Mm-hmm.
1840, and parallel time. But when it came time to end the show with 1841 parallel time, none of our characters crossed over. We, as the audience, were just omnisciently looking into that world and
Yeah.
following a completely different group of people at the end of the show.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I like all of them for many different reasons. There's a storyline before the arrival of Barnabas Collins involving Laura Collins, who was a fire creature, a phoenix who rose from her ashes every 100 years. And that story and that actress, Diana Malay, later came back into the show in the 1897 time period, and
Mm-hmm.
as Laura Collins coming back to the family to claim her children and try to take them into the fire with her, as had
Mm-hmm.
happened in early 67 before some of the viewers were watching the show. Dark Shadows, unfortunately, was low rated and on the verge of cancellation in 66 and early 67
Mm-hmm.
before the arrival of the vampire Barnabas Collins. Before then, Dark Shadows was different from other shows. It was already several steps past the edge of night, the secret storm Peyton Place, in that it was a small town where mysterious, inexplicable things happened. You know, we saw
Mm-hmm.
ghosts early on in the show and a book opening by itself and things like that. And then the
Mm-hmm.
fire creature really cemented the idea that this was a supernatural show. And so the ratings were starting to come up, but ABC had told Dan Curtis and the writers and producers that we're going to cancel the show after another 13 weeks,
Oh,
3 months.
wow.
And so Curtis thought to himself, well, I'm going off anyway, so I might as well, you know, um, uh, swing for the rafters. And he got the idea from his three daughters. At the time, he had three young daughters who were the age of us kids who were watching at that time. And
Mm-hmm.
his daughters told him, make it scarier. You know, before then, we had had ghosts and strange doors opening and closing and
Mm-hmm.
sounds down the hallway and a lot of moody atmosphere. But except for the fire creature, no, not as much overt supernatural horror.
Mm-hmm.
And Dark Shadows was not a horror show. It was a gothic romance with
Yeah.
moments of extreme terror.
Mm-hmm.
But Curtis thought to himself, well, what scares me the most? A vampire. Okay, I'll put a vampire on the show. Curtis was a big fan of the Universal monster movies, Dracula, Frankenstein,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of those ideas and images found their way into Dark Shadows as
Mm-hmm.
he and the writers created story after story. One of his favorite movies was The Innocents, which was
Mm-hmm.
the movie version of the Henry James story, The Turn of the Screw.
Okay.
And
Yes. Okay.
and over the course of Dark Shadows, Curtis and the writers essentially did that story two times.
Mm-hmm.
Two children at Collinwood were possessed by two ghosts, so we saw that story twice. But when the vampire Barnabas Collins, played by Jonathan Frid, came onto the show, um, it was expected that he would last about 13 weeks, only about as long as the show itself. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end of that 13 weeks, there would be some sort of conclusion. Another character would drive a stake through his heart or something.
Mm-hmm.
But before that happened, the world changed because suddenly people of all ages, women, men, adults, college age people, teenagers, little kids,
Mm-hmm.
were starting to watch the show and were drawn to this character of Barnabas Collins, who at the beginning, because he was designed to be a villain, did horrible things. He abused men and women in Collinsport, Maine, and was just awful. But
Mm-hmm.
the way Jonathan Frid played the part, he was not just a two-dimensional stock villain. He had depth to him because we could see his remorse and his suffering and his agonizing over being a vampire and being compelled to bite people and put them under their power and try to control the minds of people for various reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So the character was beginning to be softened in a way. And Dr. Julia Hoffman, whom I mentioned, um, uh, was falling in love with him, which was Grayson Hall, that actress's contribution to the show. I'm not sure that it started out that she was going to fall in love with him, but the way she played the part and the way they had such wonderful chemistry that
Mm-hmm.
evolved too. So, so by this time, ABC wanted to keep the show. It was not going to be canceled because people were tuning in
Mm-hmm.
record numbers to watch this vampire on TV, and so the show was saved. But then Curtis and the writers said, "Well, how can we keep this going? He's Barnabas is a vampire and he's bitten people and done bad things, but people love him or love to hate him. You know, he's
Mm-hmm.
an anti-hero now. He's not a villain." So how do we keep this going? And so that's when they got the idea of, well, let's go back in time and show him when he was a normal human man and show
Mm-hmm.
his human emotions and the problems that he had and what led to the witch Angelique cursing him with vampirism. And
Mm-hmm.
so the ratings climbed dramatically during that period. And then when the show went back to the present time of 1968, people were watching, and that's when all of the merchandise, memorabilia started coming out. Two
Okay.
games, many comic books and paperback novels, two sets of trading cards, a Halloween costume, several model kits, and then Dark Shadows and the Stars were in all of the teen magazines, Tiger Beat and 16. You
Oh,
know, they
wow.
were just as popular as the all of the teen idols from
Mm-hmm.
movies and nighttime TV. So, and then, like I say, by 1969, when the story spent about 9 months in the year 1897, and David
Mm-hmm.
Selby as Quentin Collins, the werewolf, came into the story,
Mm-hmm.
20 million people were watching, and it was one of the most watched shows on daytime, and it became a cult and still is to this day. You know, Star Trek, Doctor Who, and Dark Shadows are perhaps the foremost cult TV shows,
Yes.
as well as a few others that have happened more recently, like Twin Peaks and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Cult TV really began with Doctor Who, Dark Shadows, and Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. It's just it's phenomenal, the like you said, the cult following. And I've been able to watch it once all the way through, loved it, and I decided to start it again. So I started from the very beginning. It's very it hooks you in, and just, yeah, it's wonderful. So I was able to watch the 1991, the one season, and I thought it was very well done. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. I really liked the 1991 Dark Shadows. Dan Curtis, ABC asked Dan Curtis to redo Dark Shadows as a weekly nighttime show, as they said, sort of a dynasty with fangs.
Mm-hmm.
And so Curtis and Sam Hall, who had written the original show, um, uh, uh, reunited, and Curtis directed many of the episodes, and then others were directed by Armand Mastroianni and a few other directors.
Hmm.
And Robert Cobert came back to write the music. You know, Dark Shadows isn't really Dark Shadows unless you hear that great theme song and the
Yes.
Collinwood theme and Josette's music box. You know,
Mhm.
there are a few TV shows whose music is another character all its own.
Mhm.
Batman, The Odd Couple, Twin Peaks, Downton Abbey. You know, when you hear that music, you know, okay, well, that show is on. I know
Mhm.
that show. And Dark Shadows certainly is such a case because Robert Cobert wrote about 20 or 24 hours of music for the original show and used a lot of it for the 1991 show and then
Okay.
kept enhancing it with new compositions.
Mhm.
But I liked the show very much. It ran sadly for only 13 hours, 12 episodes,
Yeah.
and it had the misfortune of coming on just as the Persian Gulf War broke out.
Oh,
In
wow.
the
Okay.
it was on NBC at night, and NBC had been hyping and advertising the show and gave it like a mini series premiere with a 2 hour episode on Monday and I mean on Sunday night, and then I think a
Mhm.
2 hour one on Monday night too, before it was going to go to its Friday night 1 hour regular time slot. But between that Sunday and Monday and the Friday night, the Persian Gulf War broke out,
Okay.
and you know, news bulletins came on, and people, you know, became distracted from television because they were watching TV news about the war
Mhm.
and were distressed about the war. So Dark Shadows kind of got lost its momentum and got lost in the shuffle there.
Mhm.
But luckily, all of the episodes are on VHS and DVD,
Mhm.
and it is an excellent um, uh, retelling of events from the original show, as well as new elements and new twists and new
Mhm.
interpretations of characters. Um, so Dan Curtis said that he was making this show uh, in the way that he and the fans had wished that the original show had looked in terms of big budget. We fans didn't find anything wrong with the way it looked originally because the
Mhm.
sets were even more elaborate than other daytime soap operas, but it
Yeah.
was, you know, a much smaller budget and shot on videotape, whereas the 1991 Dark Shadows was on film, and it took longer to make the episodes, and the special effects were far better, and um, so a lot of it was filmed, you know, on sets like all of Dark Shadows was, but
Mhm.
some of it was filmed at Greystone Mansion in Beverly Hills, both inside and outside. When you see that checkerboard floor, that black and white
Mhm.
checkerboard, you've seen that in many movies and TV shows, and that's the inside of Greystone Mansion.
Okay.
And Curtis used Greystone again for a few scenes in The Winds of War and War and Remembrance, and it
Mhm.
was Collinwood again for the 2004 Unsold Pilot. But
Okay.
anyway, the 1991 show was lavish and lush, you know, with costumes and atmosphere, music, everything, and the acting was fantastic. The
Mhm.
new performers who played these original parts were excellent. Ben Cross as Barnabas Collins, not trying to mimic Jonathan Frid, who can never be surpassed, but
Yeah.
playing the part, making it his own, you know,
Mhm.
but doing making a great success of it, doing a great job. And
Mhm.
Joanna Going was perfect as Victoria Winters, and Lisette Anthony as the witch Angelique was superb. And A few of those nighttime actors are going to be at the Dark Shadows Festival, including Joanna Going and Roy Thinnis, whom you remember as the star of The Invaders.
Mhm.
And Then later he took on the Roger Collins role in Dark Shadows 91, the role that Louis Edmonds of All My
Mhm.
Children had played on the original show. So yes, I like the 91 show very much, and I'm glad it I wish it should have run, you know, 5 or 6 years, you know, as
I
the other
agree.
nighttime series did,
Mhm.
like Knots Landing and all of the others. It could have run indefinitely. But because of poor timing and because of a change in executive leadership at NBC at that
Hmm.
moment, the new people in charge for some reason didn't care for Dark Shadows, but later admitted that they had made a mistake by canceling it. So I
Oh.
wish that it could had continued, but it did continue in a series of comic books from Innovation Comics in
Hmm.
1992 and 93, and
Okay.
a model kit of Ben Cross as Barnabas Collins and a few other things like that.
Oh,
Um,
neat.
so Dark Shadows, is eternal. It continues to
Hmm.
come back on TV or in movies. The two original movies made at the time of the show, House of Dark Shadows and Night of Dark Shadows, and
Hmm.
the more recent Johnny Depp movie. And of course, all of the paperback novels and comic books over the
Hmm.
years from Gold Key and Dynamite and others, and all of the merchandise and the audio dramas based on the show from Big Finish Productions,
Okay.
featuring many of the actors voicing their original characters or doing new characters as well.
Hmm.
So there's always hope that Dark Shadows will come around again at some point, and
Hmm.
there has been a lot of talk about creating a new TV series, maybe for a network or maybe for streaming, because there certainly are plenty of streaming
Oh, yeah.
sources around. Everything else is on streaming, so a new Dark Shadows might as well be as well. Or
Absolutely.
maybe a movie. Um, in the past, there's been talk of an animated series. At one point, Curtis was thinking about doing a stage musical with music by Robert Cobert and Rupert Holmes, who wrote
Okay.
"Escape," the Pina Colada song, and he
I
is
thought his name sounded familiar.
uh, and he is written for the stage. So and there was even a in the late 1980s there was even a ballet based on Dark Shadows that was done off
Okay.
Broadway.
Oh,
So
neat.
it has materialized in almost all forms and genres, and I'm certain that it will continue to do so.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask that question if you felt like that it would come around and be, reinvented or for streaming or just a regular television show on one of the networks. And yeah, I would love to see a musical. I think that would be amazing.
Yes, that would be good. Yes, because so many properties have been turned into musicals, including
Hmm.
horror properties. There was a Jekyll and Hyde musical, of course, Phantom of the Opera, and now The
Yeah.
Lost Boys on Broadway.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Sweeney
So,
Todd even. Yeah.
yeah, Somewhere in Time became a musical that premiered on the West Coast. It never made it to Broadway. So, yes,
Okay.
many genre properties have gone the musical route, and it would be nice to see that with Dark Shadows too.
Absolutely. Jeannie, questions, thoughts?
Well, I was just thinking you were talking about the Broadway theme about a musical for Dark Shadows, and I know that recently a lot of the streaming services, particularly Amazon and Netflix, have been picking up a lot of our early cult loves. Like
Hmm.
they had entertained an idea of doing a animation Firefly
Oh,
reboot,
mm-hmm,
and
Interesting.
they were doing Stargate 1 reboot,
mm-hmm.
Hmm.
but they've kind of put them on hold now. So, but I was just thinking it'd be nice to see, and in one way it would, in another way I wouldn't want someone to ruin it, but to try to do kind of something like a Dark Shadows reboot. In some instances on a streaming service. I mean, watching the old ones are great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love my classics. I can watch me some Perry Mason, some Dark Shadows, anytime. And I love it because I don't trust some of the ways that interpretation gets done in today's
Hmm.
world.
Mm-hmm.
So, but a musical would definitely be wonderful. I mean, they did it, like you said, for Phantom of the Opera, and now they've done it for the Lost Boys, which that kind of blows me away. When I heard that, I was like,
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I had seen the advertisements and stuff before and before you brought it up, and I was like, huh, Broadway
Yes.
musical,
And
Lost Boys.
one of the Lost Boys actors won a Tony Award the other night on at the Tony Award ceremony, and
Oh.
the show has been getting a lot of good reviews. You know, it's impressive visually
Hmm.
and um, I assume follows the 1987 movie closely.
Mhm.
I'm not sure
Hmm.
about that, but I imagine it does. So,
Yeah, I would
Dark
imagine it
Shadows,
would.
like any great idea, like Star Trek, like Superman, Batman, Tarzan, Sherlock Holmes, Dracula, Dark Shadows can be, you know, used in any sort of format, any sort of creative outlet, because
Yeah.
the idea is strong enough and deep enough.
Hmm. That's
Yeah,
true.
and it would be great to introduce it to the younger crowd
Hmm.
because I think they would it would be right up there as another cult hit for the ones who are, like the Wednesday people that like Wednesday
Hmm.
and
Yes.
the younger generation like that are
And
into
Stranger Things.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
the new old.
Yes.
The
Yes.
new old, I guess is what we could call it. But yeah, it would be a nice rendition to see something that was so popular to come back again if they do it right,
Yeah.
Yes.
as long as they don't kill it. It's
Right.
like, you know,
Absolutely.
don't ever. But so yeah, but 60 years, it's just hard to fathom because it doesn't feel like 60 years. I mean, I was actually found Emergency the other day and I started watching Emergency again and I was like, "Oh my God. I can't believe it's as old as I am." I'm
Yeah,
like, "No."
that's from 50 to 55 years ago. Yeah, that's on Me TV every afternoon. Yes.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I found the series on Tubi. So I
Oh.
was no, not Tubi, Roku.
Oh,
It was on
okay.
Okay.
Roku.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, and I was like, "Oh man." I was like, "Yeah, that's the good stuff."
Mm.
MASH has always been around and shows up everywhere and everybody
Mhm.
knows Hawkeye. Everybody
Hmm.
knows MASH, even some of the younger generation because their parents were watching reruns when they
Hmm.
were young. So,
That's
yeah,
true.
things like Dark Shadows needs to reboot its cult classic.
Yes. Well,
Hmm.
who
Yeah,
knows? Maybe we'll get a surprise announcement of something at the convention. There have been
That'd be
hints that there
nice.
might be surprises. I don't know whether that means a surprise guest or an announcement about a project, or
Hmm.
I know that there are some new books and other merchandise that are going to come out at the festival.
Okay.
So it should be interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
even a Dark
absolutely.
Shadows movie.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That would be nice.
Hmm.
If we can't get the series rebooted, please give us a movie.
Right. And it was remarkable that back in 1970 and 71, Dan Curtis and the original actors made two movies based on the TV show. That was almost unheard of. A few TV shows had made a movie, Our Miss Brooks, McHale's Navy, The Munsters, Batman, but this was
Hmm.
the first daytime soap opera that had ever been made into a movie, and they did it two times. House of Dark Shadows in 1970, filmed at the historic home Lyndhurst on the banks of the Hudson River in Tarrytown, New York, at the same time as the TV show was going on, being taped in Manhattan every day. And it was during the 1970 parallel time storyline. And so some of the characters disappear for a couple of weeks or longer because
Hmm.
they were up at Lyndhurst in Tarrytown filming their scenes for the movie, and then they came
Okay.
back. And even Jonathan Frid as Barnabas Collins was trapped in a chained coffin for a few weeks in 1970 parallel time so that Jonathan Frid could be free to do his mini scenes for House of
Hmm.
Dark Shadows. And then Night of Dark Shadows came out in 71 after the show had ended, just a
Mhm.
week after they taped the last episode of the TV show. The cast, many of the cast members reassembled at Tarrytown, at Lyndhurst in Tarrytown to make Night of Dark Shadows.
Mhm.
House of Dark Shadows is a retelling of the introduction of Barnabas storyline with Jonathan Frid and Grayson Hall, but Night of Dark Shadows, in a way, is similar to the 1970 parallel time story, which is very similar to the novel and film Rebecca, but
Okay.
it also is a departure from the tone of the TV show. It's not a vampire story; it's a ghost story,
Okay.
and unfortunately, a lot of the footage was cut at the very last minute. But if the movie could have come out as a longer
Hmm.
version back then, it would be one of the classics of 70s horror cinema, and that's
Hmm.
saying a lot because our beloved 1970s was full of great classic horror movies and great
Hmm.
films of all kinds. But that's, I wish I could hear an announcement someday that the complete Night of Dark Shadows is going to come out on DVD or Blu-ray, but maybe that can be in the future because the footage still exists. I would love to see that at some point.
That
Uh,
would be neat.
yeah.
Yeah, I've
Yeah, you
seen
never know.
the House of Dark Shadows, but Night of Dark Shadows I have not. It's still on my
Mhm.
list to watch.
Okay.
Gee, I'm sorry. I
Yes.
think I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say that would be cool to have an actual complete series, including the movies and any other things they might have done. Because I know they've done it for a few other, like I think there's Perry Mason and Columbo and stuff like that. They've done it where they've included all the, not just the series, but the movies they made to go along with them.
Yes.
So it would be
Hmm.
nice to have it all in one big clump. So
Yeah.
Hmm.
you know, 'cause everybody that still has the videos and stuff like me and Carmen and Dr. Jeff and everything, we would like to have it all nice in a little thing so we wouldn't have to go through and search, especially
Hmm.
when we take it out to watch it and then don't remember where we put it and then have to
Right.
hunt it down. And
Well, all 1,225 episodes of the original Dark Shadows are in a coffin set. You know,
yeah,
it's a
Oh,
box
nice.
that's shaped like a coffin, and you open it that way, and then you see the DVDs stacked in there. Um,
Hmm.
so um, so yeah, the show, all the entire series has come out on VHS and then on DVD two times, and there may be an announcement about a release of some more material at the Dark Shadows Festival.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, and then Dark Shadows, ran on the Decades channel for a while. It later turned into catchy comedy and stopped showing dramas, just comedies.
Okay.
But you can find it. I think there's some episodes on Peacock and a few other streaming services. But Dark Shadows has an entire channel on Tubi.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yes.
you
That's why
can
I'm
turn it on
watching.
any time of the day or night, and you see an episode. So it is out there, in all formats: VHS, DVD, cable TV, and streaming. And of course, the Sci-Fi Channel ran it for many, many years throughout the
Mhm.
90s and the early 2000s, and that's when the show sort of had another rebirth and gained many new fans because people were watching on the Sci-Fi Channel, and it was being shown in England for the first time. So,
Oh.
the 90s and the early 2000s was the time when many new fans of all ages, um, little kids, teenagers, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s who weren't born when the show was on, started coming to the festivals because they loved Dark Shadows as much as all
Hmm.
of us who ran home from school to watch it on ABC. But I must say, I came to the show late. I'm not one of the those fans who watched from day one. I
Hmm.
didn't know about it when it started in 1966. I was very young back then, but I was. It was not until I was in the third grade in September of 1967 that I
Hmm.
was homesick from school one day and turning the three or four channels. That's all we had: ABC, NBC, CBS, and the educational NET, which is now PBS. And so I
Hmm.
was turning the channels and I ran across this scene of two children my age in a creepy cellar, and there's a coffin in the basement, and suddenly the coffin opens and out comes the vampire Barnabas Collins. And so naturally, I was instantly hooked from seeing a scene like that, a boy and a girl my age seeing a vampire. So from then on, I watched until the very end. Or if I didn't get home from school in time, my mother, who was a soap opera fan, she watched many other shows, and I did too,
Hmm.
would watch and tell me about it. This was before we had a cassette tape recorder,
Hmm.
later when she was working, I would turn on the cassette tape and tape Days of Our Lives or The Doctors or Another World, but
Hmm.
this was before we had that idea or even a cassette player. So it was like the oral tradition. My mother watched the show and then told me the show.
Oh, that's
So
so
there
cool.
were some of those later episodes because Nashville changed the time and moved Dark Shadows to an earlier time before I got out of school. So there
Hmm.
were quite a few of those late episodes, late in the series at the very end, that I didn't see actually until the show started coming out on VHS. Only
Okay.
my mother had told me about them, and then fans started circulating some cassette tape recordings because some
Hmm.
people were taping it. And of all the 1,225 episodes, all of them exist except for one, which is lost. But luckily, a fan in Canada, I believe, I guess near Detroit, because most of Canada didn't get it, but people who lived near Detroit and a few other cities got it. But a fan up in Canada um, uh, could hear but could not see, and so she made a reel-to-reel tape recording
Oh,
of
wow.
of the show every day. And so when it came time to put that lost episode on videotape, there was
Hmm.
no, picture, but we had the sound because that fan lent her reel-to-reel recording of the sound, and
Hmm.
then Jim Pearson and MPI Home Video recreated the episode by showing still pictures taken from episodes just before or just after, showing the
Hmm.
characters and showing them talking or standing together and approximating, the picture that we would have seen on that day. And
Hmm.
luckily, the last scene of the previous episode was the first scene of this lost episode. So MPI Home Video just reran that at the beginning. And then
Hmm.
luckily at the end, the we saw that scene again the next day. So we got to transplant that little part. But for the rest of the time, it was just still pictures and the tape of the sound, as well as Dark Shadow star Laura Parker, who played Angelique, doing a little bit on camera between the scenes, where the commercials would have been, in which
Hmm.
she further explains, to make sure we know exactly what happened in the video part of the episode. So luckily, all of the episodes exist either on their original color videotapes or black and white videotapes, or on a black and white kinescope film. A few
Hmm.
of the tapes were missing, but luckily there were black and white kinescope film backups. So
Hmm.
that's why when you're watching the show, Dark Shadows begins in black and white, as so many shows did back then,
Hmm.
and then switched to color. But then after it switches to color, when you're watching, it goes back to black and white quite a few times. And that didn't happen on ABC back then. It stayed in color, but the color tapes of those episodes are missing, and so we're watching a black and white film of that episode instead. All My Children began in color in 1970, but for some reason ABC didn't keep the color tapes of the first few years. It kept only black and white films
Oh,
of
wow.
the episodes. So when you go back and look at early All My Children, it's in black and white because those color episodes don't exist. So it was unusual back then,
Yeah.
but I'm glad we have as many soap opera episodes as we do.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I do know that that was similar to the Johnny Carson show. They lost a lot of
Mhm.
the episodes because not only did they misplace them, they literally were filming over top of them.
Yes.
Oh,
So it's like
Yeah.
so many episodes have been lost over the
mhm.
years.
Right. Especially late night and daytime, soap
Hmm.
operas and game shows. People thought back then, oh, well, nobody will ever see this again. Nobody would want to see this again. So let's just use this expensive video cassette again
Yeah.
and tape today's episode on it. So,
Hmm.
but luckily, Dan Curtis had the foresight to keep all of his episodes. I guess he realized that this was an important show and valuable, and
Hmm.
someday it perhaps could come around in a rerun or something, the way it had come back as two movies. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that all of them except one do exist today.
Yeah. That's
Well,
absolutely incredible that like it's just one that really was lost.
Right, because
and
the Procter and Gamble soap operas, especially As the World Turns, Guiding Light, Another World, Search for
Mhm.
Tomorrow, The Edge of Night, don't really exist until about 1978. There are
Okay.
special episodes like weddings and big events that
Hmm.
people kept films of, but sadly, Procter and Gamble did not keep the tapes until starting in about 1978. So if you want to watch The Edge of Night or As the World Turns or something
Hmm.
like that, you can't really, you can see a few little sample episodes from the 60s and
Hmm.
early 70s, but you can't watch a straight run until the late 70s.
Wow.
I
Okay.
guess they really didn't have to worry about royalties because, now in today's world, the actors that get signed, that if
Hmm.
their show goes off of regular network television and goes on to cable or gets repeated
Hmm.
or whatever, they get it's some type of royalty from the repeats.
Right.
So I would think it would be kind of, it's kind of sad that maybe the people like from Dark Shadow and so the others that are still around, I don't think they would ever get royalties, even though they get played.
Hmm.
Like you said, they had their own channel. They are on Tubi. They're on all these Me TV and all this kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
can you imagine how they could have made money if they had royalties?
Oh, yes. Well, I've heard
Yeah.
conflicting reports about that. I know one Dark Shadow star has said, yes, they do receive royalties, but then I've heard that it's either not very much at all or it's nothing. So I don't know about that, but hopefully, um, after the show, started to go onto the Sci-Fi Channel and became prominent again, maybe something was worked out so that the actors
Yeah.
could get some royalties. But I don't know. We'll have to ask them that at a convention sometime.
Yeah.
And there could be a difference between residuals and royalties.
Well,
That's
yeah,
true.
that's what I meant to say the word residuals. I was
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
about book
So,
royalties, but yeah,
Hmm.
residuals are what actors get paid when their movies come back on TV or whatever. And
Hmm.
but sadly, it's not very much. I on Facebook, I'm Facebook friends with quite a few actors, and they often will show a
Hmm.
picture of a check for 1 penny
Oh,
yeah.
or
wow.
5 cents or 17 cents.
Hmm.
So it's not much, but they do get some sort of residuals.
Okay.
Well, I saw, I liked Blue Buds when it was on, and one of the actors, he played one of the sergeants. He wasn't one of the main actors, but
Hmm.
they were interviewing him on a podcast I was watching, and he goes, what's really sad? He said, I'm making more money now
Oh,
on
Wow.
the repeats and from the residuals, and or
Hmm.
I think he might have called them royalties. No, I think he called them
yeah,
residuals.
residuals.
Yeah.
Okay.
He said, I'm making more money now on the residuals from the 7 seasons that I was on the show than when I was actually on the show.
That's wow.
Oh,
And
that's
I
good.
think nowadays they negotiate that with their contracts
Yeah.
Yeah,
because
I'm
I
sure they
think it
have better
starts.
contracts and the agents work it out for them to get more money. So I'm
Hmm.
glad to know that.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
is good.
yeah.
That
Especially
is.
when you get cult hits like Blue Bloods and things like that that come into
Hmm.
play.
Yeah.
It's
And
good to
Star
know that
Trek.
yeah, Star Trek
Yeah,
and although
absolutely.
some of the later Star Treks they're doing, I'm just kind of like, yeah, just stop. You're killing me. Stop.
Well, too much of anything is
Yeah,
too
it's a
much.
bad. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's true.
that's why I think that for a while there were too many Star Wars movies, and
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
so they stopped being special. They weren't
Yes.
earth-shaking events like many of them were, because for a while there, one came out every 2 years, and so
Hmm.
people's interest began to wane a bit.
I think so
And that's
too.
true with most of the movie series. After about the third or fourth Superman or Batman movie, the
Hmm.
the interest starts to go down, the popularity goes down, and then we don't have a movie for a while until the whole thing is reimagined and rebooted later.
Hmm.
Yeah, a new trend starts. But yeah, like you said with Star Trek, they made a point to where they spread them out enough to where like you had the original Star Trek, but then you
Hmm.
didn't have another Star Trek until you had the Next Generation,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
then that kind of left off. But I mean, they really should just not had Deep Space Nine in my opinion, but that's just me. Um, but and it's like then they kept going and to the point to by the time they got to Enterprise, in my opinion, it was just people were tired.
Yes.
It's like you're beating a dead horse to as the old cliche goes.
Hmm.
And like now with the reboot of the 2009 Star Trek, which I was not a fan of until I watched it in the movies, and I was like, finally, they understood that you can't reinvent what was good to begin with, but you can turn it into something different. So
Yeah.
making it like an alternate reality was great. But
Yeah.
now it's like you can't not see like new Star Trek stuff.
Hmm.
And it's like, no, you're killing it. You're
Yeah.
just like not good anymore.
Hmm.
So yeah, it'd be great to have something like Dark Shadows because it's one of a kind.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that would be interesting.
And an interesting little bit of trivia there is we talked about Ben Cross, who played Barnabas Collins in
Hmm.
1991. Well, he is a big part of this new Star Trek universe too, because he played Sarek, Spock's father,
Hmm.
in a couple of those new movies. Sadly, Ben Cross is dead now, but I'm glad he got to participate in both Star Trek and Dark Shadows. So
Yeah.
he is a cult figure right up there with all of the others over the decades.
Oh
Absolutely.
yes. And I saw where Ben Kingsley is going to be in something new. And it's like, oh wow, he hasn't been anything in a while, but it's like, all right, because he's a
Yeah.
popular, one of the popular ones in my opinion. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in a couple of Marvel movies, especially the Shang-Chi movie,
hmm
Master of Kung Fu,
Hmm.
which was a very good Marvel movie. So
oh
it's
yeah.
fun to see these actors. Robert Redford has been in Marvel movies, Jenny Agutter. So
That's true.
it's fun
Yeah.
to see these new actors as well as all of our classic favorite actors coming back into these uh, cult projects.
Hmm.
Yeah, it is great.
I agree. And Jeannie, one of the latest things that Ben Kingsley was in was the Thursday Murder Club movie
Mhm.
with Pierce Brosnan,
Oh.
Helen Mirren. It's a great movie. I tried to read the book. I didn't care for it, so I didn't finish it. But the movie is phenomenal.
Yeah, I've seen it on my streaming. I just haven't gotten around to wanting to watch it yet.
Yeah. Well, just
But
keep it on your list.
oh yes, absolutely. But yeah, 60 years of Dark Shadows is hard to believe, but
Yeah.
we're
It's
so glad,
awesome.
especially Dr. Jeff, you keeping them alive with Dan Curtis with your
Yes.
writings and stuff. So
Yeah,
that's good.
I
People,
try.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Do you?
Well, Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you have any plans on doing any more books on Dan Curtis or Dark Shadows?
I've been thinking about some things, and lately I have contributed to some multi-author books,
Hmm.
a few books about fans' memories of Dark Shadows,
Oh,
and
okay.
a wonderful new book coming out in connection with the festival called Dark Shadows Legacy, put
Okay.
together by Dark Shadows star Catherine Lee Scott and Tony Award-winning and Oscar-nominated writer John Logan, who has
Okay.
written or co-written a couple of James Bond movies and
Hmm.
Gladiator, Hugo, Rango, Any
Hmm.
Given Sunday, many great films. But the two of them have gotten together and put together a lavish coffee table book and asked different fans and stars to write a little essay about all aspects of Dark Shadows, not just the TV shows, plural, but the
Hmm.
movies, the comic books, the records, Dan Curtis himself, the
Hmm.
actors, the merchandise, everything. And so they asked me to write a little bit about the Dark Shadows comic books.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Okay.
so that's coming out, and then well, like I say, I was interviewed in those two issues of Wonder magazine, and I just submitted a couple of articles about comic books, not Dark Shadows, but Marvel
Mhm.
and DC, to Wonder magazine, and forgot what I was going to say. Um, uh, did a chapter in a couple of other books and then wrote the foreword to this book, Masters of Terror Monies, which is the history of TV horror hosts here in Nashville, including
Okay.
Sir Cecil Creep, Dr. Lucifer, the current host, Dr. Gangrene, who has
Hmm.
written this book. And I
Hmm.
wrote the foreword to it because I was good friends with Ken Bramming, who played Dr. Lucifer, Nashville's first TV horror host.
Oh.
He and I worked together at WAMB Radio, and
Hmm.
I interviewed him one time for Film Facts magazine about his years as Dr. Lucifer. And so Larry Underwood has written a superb book chronicling many different horror hosts, not just Sir Cecil Creep, whom all of us remember. And he later was on national cable TV on the Nashville Network on a show
Hmm.
called The Phantom of the Opry, in which
Cool.
Sir Cecil Creep showed classic horror movies like he had done on Channel 4 a
Hmm.
decade earlier. So, I know what I was going to say. I have an article on a website called vampiresandSlayers.net. VampiresandSlayers.net. All
Okay.
about Dan Curtis and Richard Matheson's outstanding adaptation of Dracula, starring Jack Palance from
Hmm.
the early 1970s. And also on another website called lauraparkerinfo.com.
Okay.
Laura, Lara, parkerinfo.com. You can click on a place that says interviews, and there's an interview that I did with Laura Parker. Not as much about Dark Shadows, although we talk a great deal about it, but the focus
Hmm.
of the interview was about her movies. Night of Dark Shadows and
Hmm.
a few others. Save the Tiger, a great movie with Jack Lemmon, Foxfire Light with Leslie Nielsen, and another talk about cult classic, horror from the 70s, Race with the Devil.
Oh,
Warren Oates, Loretta Swit, Peter Fonda, and Laura Parker.
oh,
And
wow.
if you haven't seen that one, watch that one, Race with the Devil. It's
Okay.
on DVD and Blu-ray, and last September the Belcourt Theater here in Nashville showed it. But it's a cult classic, shocking and horrifying in
Mhm.
its subject matter of Satanism and these two couples, these four people who are on vacation and stumble onto a discovery of Satanism, and then they are pursued, because they have seen something they should not have. So it's very exciting and scary with a very unusual ending. So if you run across that one, Race with the Devil, 1975, that's a great
Okay.
one to watch Laura Parker from Dark Shadows.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And if you run across Save the Tiger, watch for two Dark Shadows stars, Laura Parker and Thayer David, who played Professor Stokes.
Yes.
She plays a prostitute and he plays an arsonist.
Oh, wow.
They don't have scenes together, but they have scenes with Jack Lemmon, who won the Best Actor Oscar for Save the Tiger. So
Okay.
that one is a superb, gripping drama from the
Mhm.
70s, one of the greatest decades of cinema.
Okay.
Wonderful.
That sounds really good.
Yeah. Good to know. Make notes so we have something to watch later on. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yes. Yes. Well, I guess we kind of have, I think, celebrated quite a bit. We could probably
Hmm.
celebrate for longer time and everything else.
Hmm.
But for
Yeah.
our viewers and listeners out there, yes, check out Dr. Jeff's books. He is an amazing writer. And join us on Poe Unplugged. Usually, Dr. Jeff is always with us and has wonderful points to make about different Poe stories and things. And also, just viewers and listeners, if you have not checked out anything Dark Shadows, you need to, especially the original series, because there's a reason why I finished it like a little over a year ago and I'm watching it again. And part of it is, I was not born when it started. I was born, I guess, at the end, because I was born in 71. But I just, I was hooked the minute I started, and to celebrate the 60th anniversary, I'm starting it over. So,
That's
but yeah.
great. I'm rewatching it too.
Oh, yay!
Yeah.
Yay! Well, and Dr. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on with us again. We love when you come on and talk with us.
Well, thank you so much, Jeannie and Carmen. I enjoy talking with you very, very much.
Well, great. Yeah.
And we will see you at Poe Unplugged.
Yes,
Right.
next week.
Yes. Uh-huh. We're talking about the imp of the perverse.
Yes,
That is correct.
absolutely. Well, I guess on
On
that
that
note,
note, we
we
are
are
Poe
out.
Out.